This morning, tough lessons. How President Trump's choice to lead the Education Department could shake up schooling. The Trump administration on the brink of a major education shakeup. The future of the Department of Education seems unclear at this point. Joining us now is Erika Sanzi, the Director of Outreach for Parents Defending Education. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's start with Linda McMahon, whose confirmation hearings are going on right now to lead the Department of Ed. Now, there's a thinking out here that the Trump administration, maybe McMahon, if she's confirmed, is simply just going to torch the Department of Education, get rid of programs to fund low-income schools, or whether it's Pell Grants. You were listening in on the confirmation hearings. What did you take from this?
Yeah, there's a lot of hysteria around all of these hearings, and Linda McMahon's is certainly no exception. But number one, she is a very nuanced person from what I can tell, and so she hasn't ever talked about wanting to destroy the Department of Education. What she has talked about is potentially reorienting it in ways to make it more efficient. So that would mean not cutting funds, particularly funds that are guaranteed, by law,
right,
in terms of disabilities or for poor students. But she has talked about potentially having that money sort of live in a different department, right? So you could give out the money for students with disabilities that could come out of HHS, or it's possible that the Title I money for low-income students could live at the Treasury Department. So again, I think that she's looking at this much more about how can we best serve students and families, and if what we're doing right now isn't the best way or isn't working, she's thinking of other ways to do it. But the hysteria around the idea that there's going to be no money for the students who have the highest needs, it's just totally false.
Well, that's where a lot of the argument against it is coming from, saying that all this money is going to go away and these kids won't have access to some of the programs that they need. So where do you stand in terms of maybe dismantling the Department of Education? That's something that Trump has in some ways called for. What do you think? What are the pros and cons of this?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I was listening to somebody the other day who works at a very big agency in the federal government related to education. And even he was like, sometimes you do have to come in and break a lot of things in order to get on a better path. So Trump clearly is a little bit of a bull in a china shop here. So is it possible that we're going to see some reforms that are much more significant than we've ever seen since the department came to be under President Carter? That's definitely possible. But again, there's federal guarantees around a lot of the money and funds and programs that I hate to say, but right now, partisan Democrats are kind of just lying and saying that stuff's going to go away. It can't go away. It's protected. Now, could it emanate from a different department so that because people decide that it would make more sense for it to come from a different department than the Department of Ed? Yes, that's certainly a possibility, and I think worth having that conversation. But there's a lot of dishonesty out there right now, I think, in the hope that people will get hysterical and scared. And again, it's just simply not the case. The other thing I would say is that Linda McMahon, what comes across in her hearings and in the past as a business owner, is that she just wants to see how it's going, take a look at it, get her eyes on it, and then make smart decisions. She's not an ideologue. She doesn't have knee-jerk reactions. And so again, I certainly think that for a role like this, she is very well suited.
Well, what do you think about this? Nearly $1 billion in contracts with the federal Department of Ed have been slashed by DOGE. We're talking only 29 diversity, equity, and inclusion programs costing a total of $101 million. Even programming tracking student progress gone. What type of impact is this going to have?
Yeah, again, the talk of this tracking student progress stuff is very, very murky at the moment. For example, anything related to the NAEP scores, that is not going to be cut. Okay. So there's a lot of data collection that's important and that should stay. There's a lot of data collection that is dumb, and also by the time they collect it, it's not useful because it's years old. Around the DEI stuff, I think in a lot of cases, I think people would be shocked to see what's in a lot of these materials. And so again, we're talking about, teaching very young children that they can be a boy or a girl or both or neither, and it's their choice. We're talking about shaming children for their whiteness in very, again, early grades. So again, I think that the impact is going to be positive if they go in and they get rid of the garbage, and then anything that's valuable, like, for example, we were hearing during the hearing, Black history wasn't going to be allowed to be taught. Martin Luther King wasn't going to be allowed to be celebrated. That's ridiculous, patently false. But again, it does induce hysteria and fear. And I think that that's in some ways what they're trying to do. But again, let her go in, let these other people go in and take a look. There's a lot to cut in these departments. I hate to break the news to people, but a lot of the most important things that people are worried about, they're not going to go anywhere.
It sounds like even with the DEI stuff, you said there's a possibility of going in and maybe keeping some of the aspects of these programs and not just throwing out the baby with the bathwater, so to speak.
Yeah, yes. Or for example, if you have a program that targets students based on race, which is against the law, but a lot of districts are doing that, you could just change it, right? And you could say, well, no, we're not going to target based on race. We're going to target based on the students that are struggling, that need the most help, the students that need remediation, regardless of their race or ethnicity.
Okay, thanks so much. Parents Defending Education Director of Outreach, Erika Sanzi, thank you so much for joining us.
Great to see you. Thanks for having me.